crashed?
Jim, just a few moments ago, something believed to be a plane crashed into the south tower of the World Trade Center. I just saw flames inside. You can see the smoke coming out of the tower. We have no idea of what it was. It was a tremendous boom just a few moments ago. You can hear around me emergency vehicles heading towards the scene. Now, this could have been an aircraft, or it could have been something internal. It appears to be something coming from the outside due to the nature of the opening on about the 100th floor of the south tower of the World Trade Center. Police vehicles and fire vehicles are zipping by me here. We just have no idea. So to the south of the tower, we see some particles, also some gray smoke. Now the smoke coming out of the opening appears to be black smoke. This would indicate things are burning inside. We have no idea of what happened, but we did hear what sounded like an aircraft, and then a tremendous boom. Now, I don't know whether we can confirm that that was an aircraft or not. David, what did you hear? What would you say you heard? This is our cameraman, Dave Stolick.
Incredible explosion. Very, very loud.
How about you, hon?
It sounded like a bomb.
Well, it could be. It could be something internal as well. There are pieces of the superstructure of the World Trade Center sticking out, but a lot going in. As I say, this appears to be about the 100th floor of the south tower of the World Trade Center. I hope we can get some further information from the newsroom up there, Jim.
Ollie, I'm just told also that our transmitter, which is on top of the World Trade Center, also took a hit. So we were briefly affected up here. One's memory has to go back to the another terrorist attack. One would hope it is not this time, but if it were a plane that crashed into the side of the building, you would imagine that there would be something on the ground that would be visible. So
that's true, Jim. I cannot see the ground from here. You'll recall back in, I believe it was 1945, when a U.S. Air Force plane crashed into about the 70th or 80th floor of the Empire State Building during a foggy night. The skies here, as you can see, are perfectly clear. So I'm starting to lean to the idea that perhaps this, whatever happened here, came from the inside of the World Trade Center.
Yeah, of course, that incident back there in the 40s in the offices of Catholic Charities up on the 80th floor of the Empire State Building. This, of course, the new tallest building in town. Now, obviously, on the north tower of the World Trade Center, something has either crashed into the World Trade Center. If it were I'm just told that Metro Traffic is reporting that it was indeed a plane crash. If that's the case, where's the plane? I would ask. I don't see it in that live picture there. And one's thoughts obviously go back to a terrorist attack on the World Trade Center that created havoc there back in the early 90s. Ollie, any new developments that you
Jim,
can see from your vantage point?
You can see flames now. There is a fire going on at that site. We don't know. Are you saying that Shadow Traffic is saying something about a plane?
Shadow Traffic is telling us that it was indeed a plane crash. Metro Traffic, I'm sorry. Metro Traffic is telling us that it was indeed a plane crash. Now, I understand that you are over by City Hall, having been reporting on the political developments. Now, you are a good, 8, 9, 10 blocks away from the scene right now?
At least, Jim. We're at Park Row, and of course the World Trade Center is at least 6 or 7 blocks away from us. I do see more flame now.
Okay, you can see, because we cannot see flame. We see lots of black smoke, but we can't see flame. All right, here's Ollie, if you have a monitor there, I don't know whether you do or not, but there is another picture in which we do see flame.
Right.
And we see a gaping hole in the exterior of the North Tower of the World Trade Center with smoke. Go ahead.
That's the south side of the North Tower of the World Trade Center. If this indeed was an aircraft, this has not been confirmed, it was heading south over Manhattan. And I did hear some kind of a screech or some kind of a wail before a tremendous boom. So I first thought it was a plane. Then I looked at the at what was going on here and saw that perhaps it was internal rather than external. But we'll have to wait for official confirmation on that.
Now,
emergency vehicles, as you know, Jim, are really pouring onto the scene.
Sure, we can hear them in the background as you're reporting to us. Now, once again, what time was it, if you can recall, Ali, when this took place?
We were right into the commercial break, and it was about a minute and a half before we came on, Jim, so work it out.
All right, Ali. Now, I'm told by the control room that we're obviously trying to talk to people in that neighborhood who have been a little closer to it than you are, Ali. Do we have any people to talk to?
Sure, we've got some people here walking away. Excuse me, sir, did you see what happened?
All right, go ahead.
Yeah, I saw something. It's something like bomb, and
Did you see anything hit the building, or did it come from the building?
that's the bomb. I think so. That's the
Something
bomb.
hit the building?
Yeah.
All right, thank you. All right, we got some other people. They're all rushing away from the site.
Don't blame him, especially that fellow with a little girl in his arms.
Did you see what happened, sir? Did you see what happened? What happened?
Well, I was in the PATH train, and there was a huge explosion sound. Everyone came out. A large section of the building is blown out, around like the 80th floor.
Was it hit by something, or was it something inside?
It was inside. Because it looked out. Everything was coming out.
Everything
all
was
the
coming-
windows were coming out. All the papers were
What is
coming
on
out.
the sidewalk?
I didn't see anything.
Was there any people hurt, do you know?
I just ran, and everyone in the PATH train just ran. I don't know if anyone was hurt, but I assume they were because the windows were all blown out.
All right, thank you.
Ali, you would have to assume a very, very terrible situation if that indeed is the case, because I'm sure there were people up there in that. There were people up there in that World Trade Center. Now, we have lost, again, our transmitter is on top of the World Trade Center, so we apparently have consequently lost contact with Dick Oliver, but we are on the phone with an eyewitness. Rosa, can you hear me? Is Rosa there?
Hello?
Rosa?
Yes.
This is Jim Ryan here in the studio.
Hi.
What is your last name, please?
Cardona Rivera.
Oh, Cardona. Rosa Cardona Rivera. Tell us what you saw and heard, if you would, please.
Okay, I'm at 99 Hudson Street. I was standing outside, actually, at the side of the building smoking a cigarette. And I hear a plane, and I don't usually see planes in this area. Then all of a sudden I saw it go right into the to the World Trade Center, to the building.
So
right
you saw a plane crash into the side of the World Trade Center?
Yes, sir.
And
I'm like on the 14th floor, so I was just like looking out, because there's like a fire, something like fire staircase or something, just like a little balcony. And I saw it go right into the building, and I was like, oh my God, And and it was a big plane. It wasn't, a little plane. It was fairly big.
how big, can you tell us? Give us an idea.
I don't know. I would say it was like a plane that I board on to go, to, wow.
So this wasn't just a small Piper Cub or something that had gone the wrong way. And of course, we would, the weather, I take it, where you are is just about picture perfect.
Picture perfect, yes. It's very clear outside.
So there would be the suspicion then that anybody who would drive a plane smack into the middle of the World Trade Center would have done it on purpose.
It would seem that either that or they lost control, but I can't see something like that. I mean, it was like right into the building, so and it was coming low, because if I were to see a plane that was going high, and then all right, but this was coming low, it's very visible.
Can you see the streets below the World Trade Center?
No, I cannot, because I'm on Hudson Street.
You're on Hudson?
Yeah, I'm on Hudson Street in Franklin. So
now you say you were out there grabbing a smoke when it happened?
Right.
What did the other people do when they heard the noise?
Well, there was nobody. I'm up on the 14th floor.
Oh, you were on the 14th floor.
Yeah,
I see.
So I'm not street level. I was up on the 14th floor, and I was just like looking out, just watching the scenery. And when I saw the plane.
All right, Rosa, thank you very much. Talking with eyewitness Rosa Cardona Rivera on the 14th floor of a building very close to the World Trade Center in Lower Manhattan. And once again, Dick Oliver was on the scene down at City Hall reporting to us. However, our transmitter is located on top of the World Trade Center building, so that apparently caused our picture from that remote to just go out on us. But once again, yes?
I was just saying, I can imagine what the people there must be going through, given what happened there. a decade ago.
Yes, Dave?
Well, a couple of things. Number one, if it indeed was a plane, the FAA or the control towers at one of the three major airports should have record of what's in the area. Sometimes they do vector planes around the southern tip of Manhattan. We might want to get a hold of Nick Gregory, who's a certified pilot and, again, flies through the area pretty regularly. Number two, even though planes typically are not that close to these buildings, with the possibility of anything from engine failure to hydraulic failure, you lose control of your ability to control aircraft. You can see right now probably police helicopters hovering right around the towers. But again, wind speeds at this point, not tremendous at all. Flying conditions near perfect.
And of course, they would have to, under ordinary circumstances, have filed some sort of a flight plan. If it were a plane that, and it apparently, according to the lady we spoke to, eyewitness just a few moments ago, she did see a plane go in there. Now, I'm told that it may be a twin-engine plane that simply smashed. It looks like it went head-on, smack into the World Trade Center building. One could only expect, given the weather conditions, given looking at that picture live right there, that it went smack inside the World Trade Center. And if that is the case, I'm afraid we've got a tragedy on our hands.
We've got something coming across the wire here, James, but actually it's nothing more than what you've already been reporting. Witnesses report hearing a huge explosion.
Yeah, well, we're looking at, there's no doubt there was a huge explosion and fire, lots of black smoke coming from that building. Black smoke, again, would indicate that the fire is nowhere near under control. I expect they have sprinkler systems in there. Jim? 1 second, Dave. I'm told we have a witness named Jim on the phone, an eyewitness. Jim, are you there?
Yes.
Jim, what's your last name, Jim?
Last name's Friedel.
Jim, tell us what you saw, if you would.
Well, I was looking out the window, and normally you'll see planes kind of flying low over the Hudson, but this is a large plane. It's something like a 727, and it was banking, and the only reason I kind of looked at it is because I thought it was rather low. Banking very hard, and then it just drove right through the World Trade Center tower.
What's your vantage point there, Jim?
I'm actually across the Hudson in Hoboken, but I have a clear view right at the World Trade Towers.
Now, it did seem to you that it was done on purpose?
You know, I don't know if I can say that, but it was a very odd type of turn. It was headed directly at the building. So whether that was on purpose or not, I can't tell. I don't know if he was trying to avoid or they were headed for it. Describe that turn for us. Would you? It was particularly heavily banked? It was pretty heavily banked. Maybe 45 degrees. Again, hard to tell. It was kind of unremarkable because you do see planes fly through here. It was a large plane, like a 727, and that's the only reason I kept looking. And then it went right into the building. I just thought it was going to follow the river and keep on going, but it didn't. Now, after the plane struck the building, from your vantage point, it apparently went directly inside. That's correct. And if that's the case, my goodness. Yeah, actually, as the impact occurred, you could see debris flying out the other side. So it apparently went right through the... we're looking at a live picture of the building right now, Jim, and what would you say that would be, about the 90th floor or so? Yeah, I can't tell if it went right through, but certainly debris was shot out the other side of the building. Did you hear anything when it took place? Did you hear the crash? Yes, I did. In terms of anything beforehand, though, no. I mean, I couldn't tell if the plane was in distress or anything like that, but certainly when it hit, there was a large explosion, and again, you had smoke and debris coming out the other side as well. All right, Jim, thank you very much. Been talking to Jim Friedel, eyewitness who witnessed the crash from Hoboken. Thank you, Jim, very much for giving us what you saw and heard. Again, just a few minutes ago, apparently a large plane, according to that eyewitness, Jim Friedel, vantage point from Hoboken, that as you look at the picture from our chopper now arriving at the scene, Jim Friedel in Hoboken said it appeared to bank sharply and smash directly, perhaps purposefully, into... Oh, my goodness.
Oh, God.
There's another one.
Oh.
Oh my goodness, there's another
This
one.
seems to be on purpose.
Oh my goodness, now it's obvious, I think, that there's a second plane just crashed into the World Trade Center. I think we have a terrorist act of proportions that we cannot begin to imagine at this juncture.
Oh my God.
My goodness. A second plane now has crashed into the other tower of the World Trade Center. Obviously, suicide, terrorist attack on the World Trade Center. What we have been fearing.
Chopper 5. Anybody on?
What we have been fearing for the longest time here apparently has come to pass. A disastrous terrorist attack on the World Trade Center, both towers, planes smashing into each one. I understand we've reestablished contact with Dick Oliver. Dick is on the phone. Yeah, Dick.
Jim, yes, just moments ago, as you know, another vehicle, some kind of an aircraft, crashed into the World Trade Center. This is no accident. This is no bomb from inside. This is, as you put it, a terrorist attack. There's no two ways about it.
Dick, what vantage point are you at now?
We're still at Park Row. People are streaming down, heading away from the World Trade Center. Having heard the second blast, people are running, some of them running now. Emergency vehicles still heading towards the World Trade Center. Now, thick black smoke. I don't know if you've got a picture. We're trying to take some pictures here for you. Black smoke coming out of the second explosion. The first explosion seems to have calmed down somewhat.
Oh, my goodness.
Yes, there's gray smoke coming out of there, meaning that the water is being put on it. People continue to stream past us here on Park Row, as well as emergency vehicles. There's an ambulance, there's a fire vehicle, and a police vehicle.
My goodness, Ollie, if I can only begin to imagine the carnage that has taken place. We see an ember falling from the top of the floor of the Empire State Building. It's tough to look at, but let's look at it once again. After a plane crashed into the side of the World Trade Center, then another one, as our cameras were focused on the building, crashed into the other tower.
Jim, is now a very serious fire on the south tower of the World Trade Center. This is about, I would estimate, about the 60th or perhaps the 70th floor of the tower, right on the corner, the northeast corner of the south tower, flames shooting out of the building. We have absolutely no reports of who was in there, but you've got to believe that being around the 9 o'clock hour that people were just sitting down for a day's work in those buildings.
Okay.
Jim, I was just thinking that if I'm not mistaken, remember several years ago, Mayor Giuliani moved the emergency management office to one of the higher, to the 30th floor or around that area of one of the towers of the World Trade Center, and that's indeed the brain of all the emergency management activity. And now,
I believe, though, that's in one of the other towers. Ollie, can you talk to that? Ollie, can you hear me?
I hear you, Jim.
Dave brought up the point that the mayor's emergency management office, the so-called bunker, is in one of the towers of the World Trade Center, but I don't believe it's one of the two top ones.
No, it's not. It's about the 30th floor. It is not up there. And by the way, for those who are wondering about the structure itself, both towers appear to be structurally sound. They're not only small pieces of debris circulating in the air around it where the explosions occurred. The buildings themselves seem to be intact as far as their structure is concerned. There have been talk over the years about the threat of terrorism making the buildings fall down onto the streets. But I can reassure everybody that they seem to be holding up fairly well while efforts are going forward to fight the fires and whatever happened in those two towers.
Now we can see smoke emanating from many of the floors of the two towers. We see to the left of your picture there smoke coming out of the floors above where the plane crashed into. I believe that's the the North Tower that we're looking at there.
Thousands of people gathered where I am here at City Hall Park, in front of City Hall, just watching what's going on. It's very difficult to. They come by and they say, "What happened? What happened?" And you just got to say something hit the building, and then something hit both buildings.
Well, we saw clearly. We didn't see the first one, but we saw clearly that a plane deliberately crashed into one of the upper floors of the World Trade Center. That was the second plane. So 2 planes crashed into the upper floors of each of the World Trade Center towers. And I understand now that Port Authority headquarters are in one of those buildings somewhere near that location.
Jim, I
yes?
don't know whether we've confirmed that this was an aircraft, or to be more specific, some people said they thought they saw a missile. I don't know how people could differentiate, but we might keep open the possibility that this was a missile attack on these buildings.
Ali, I must say that we have an eyewitness who said it was a large plane that crashed first. And then as we were watching the live picture here in the studio, we saw a plane crash into the other tower of the World Trade Center. And again, let's just to be sure, there it is. There it is. The plane went right through the other tower of the World Trade Center.
That is a very hard thing to watch.
And clearly untold carnage must be the result of those suicide terrorist activities.
That was a large commercial
plane.
jet.
The gentleman, Jim Friedel, the gentleman from Hoboken who was watching, said the first one looked to him like a 727.
Well, look at the wingspan, the swath it cut through the towers.
Yeah.
Yeah, lots of speculation, no doubt. And for years we have been talking about security from terrorists here in this major city. It makes you wonder how, if it indeed were 2 planes, we did see one, how did they manage to get into the area and to
you
just
wonder,
hit the plane like that?
these are all
They
the
hit
things that are
buildings.
going to have to be answered. How could 2 large planes just that quickly get out of control from our local?
Presumably commercial aircraft. Now, we can't speak to the first one, but that second aircraft that went through looked like a large twin-engine or 3-engine jet. Those are simply not around for private aviation.
Yeah, that's not your Piper Cub.
No, it is not.
That's obviously designed to do considerable damage to those buildings on this day when we're holding a primary election in New York City.
Now, I would imagine...
Ali?
Jim, what you're saying could be a drone aircraft. That's an aircraft that's guided electronically to its target without having a pilot. Now, that is a possibility as well. In the meantime, I can tell you that flames are shooting out of both towers now. The heaviest being on the South Tower, the northeast corner of the South Tower of the World Trade Center, but there's a considerable blaze going on the North Tower as well.
Yeah, I wonder if there's any way of finding out exactly what is located on those upper floors. You'd like to just cross your fingers and pray to God that maybe there weren't a lot of people up there at
State
that
office
time.
buildings
Yeah.
and, of course, lots of commercial office buildings on those spaces as well. I know during the last terrorist attack on the World Trade Center, my son was in the building, and he told stories of groping down through these staircases for some 50 floors before he, thank God, got out safely.
In fact, the governor has an office in the World Trade Center as well. There is one thing. After the bombing of the World Trade Center in the 90s, I do know that there were major efforts to have disaster drills, to have a preparedness plan in the event of an awful tragedy like this. But one has to wonder how, with 2 gigantic skyscrapers burning, the fire department and emergency services can handle both in that confined space without a tremendous
it's
death
no matter
toll.
how much you set in place, how much you try to prepare for, until it actually happens, it's just not the same thing.
Again, you're looking at a live picture of the World Trade Center, where shortly before 9 o'clock, shortly before 9 o'clock this morning, and then shortly after 9 o'clock, planes apparently deliberately crashed into the buildings. Alani DeVito, are you there? Alani DeVito, are you there? I understand we have another eyewitness to this catastrophe. Lonnie DeVito, are you there? Apparently we lost Lonnie, but again...
This may be confusing to some people because in a sense it is a little confusing to me. We every now and then see what looks like, I don't know if it's the bottom of a chopper that is swinging back and forth.
That would be our.
That is ours.
That would be the rudders from our chopper. Every once in a while.
Hey Jim.
That's right. Lonnie DeVito, are you there?
I am here. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Lonnie. Thank you. This is Jim Ryan in the studio. Can you tell us what you heard and saw when the blast took place?
Right now, I was actually talking to my brother on the phone about what happened. I was on my roof and I saw something from where I am. I really can't see what it is. I saw something go into the other building because from where I am, I can see the World Trade Center. I run downstairs and I see on the news that it looks like another fighter jet is what it looks like. And from my house, I can see all the smoke that's into Diker Heights. I can see all of that. It's ridiculous. I can't believe all of this is happening, honestly.
You say you're in Diker Heights,
yes.
Lonnie?
Yes.
Okay. And could you hear the blast from where you were?
No, I couldn't hear the blast, but I saw something, and it didn't look pretty. Exactly how I can't explain it in any other way. I'm in shock right now.
All right, Lonnie. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. So obviously visible, but not audible from way out in Diker Heights.
Hey, Jim?
Yes, Ollie.
They appear to be getting water on this fire. If you can see the south tower, the black smoke is getting progressively lighter. This indicates steam, which indicates that fire authorities are getting water on the flames. In the meantime, flames are still spitting out from both towers. Now, while the whatever hit the building crashed on the north side of the north tower, we see flames coming out of the east side, facing Queens and Brooklyn, if you will. The flames on the south tower, which appear to be getting lesser and lesser, is where the smoke is getting progressively lighter and lighter, indicating that the fire officials are getting closer to putting this fire out.
All right, Ali, thank you. We are now told that the FBI had been investigating a plane hijacking before these crashes took place. So there is the possibility that perhaps one or more planes were hijacked out of one of the local airports and then taken and directly flown into the World Trade Center, smashing the buildings themselves, and Lord knows what carnage took place inside.
Jim, can you put out a note, or maybe I will myself? People have been coming up to me to try to reach their family and friends and relatives to tell them that they're okay. We ought to put it out that no one that we know of was hurt on the ground or in any place around the building. That this outrage appears to be concentrated on the buildings themselves. So anybody who has a relative or a friend in Lower Manhattan, they're not likely to have been affected physically by what happened here.
All right. Again, you're looking at a split screen, two different shots of the World Trade Center. Dave, you want to say something?
I would wonder at this point, given what's happened now, what you just mentioned about the FBI, the fact that it is now seemingly two planes, if the military or someone is going to scramble and try and protect the airspace around the southern tip of Manhattan, and indeed what the situation is out at the airports right now as well.
Funny, you should, not funny, but apropos, we are now given word that all three area airports are closed. So no activity whatsoever at LaGuardia, at Kennedy, or at Newark airports. Also, there is no subway service right now on the 1, 2, 3, 9, N, and R lines. So there is no subway service in and around the World Trade Center, and all three airports have closed. Just to bring you up to date, that as a result, I think we can say with fair amount of certainty right now, two planes, large, apparently commercial jets, deliberately crashed into first one tower of the World Trade Center, then the other, just scant minutes apart. You're looking at live pictures now of the tops, two split-screen pictures of the tops of the World Trade Center, one from a fixed camera, one from our own Chopper 5. And obviously, that is in the middle of the work day, and perhaps there is some significance that it is a primary election day. I don't know, but that is in the middle of a work day. All those floors on both towers of the World Trade Center are certain to have been occupied, and it doesn't look very promising for anybody who was caught in that terrible, terrible
I'm sure
terrorist
Jim,
act.
officials would also want to say.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Right ahead.
You're just talking to me. Yes,
I'm
go
sorry.
ahead.
Go right ahead.
They're talking to me in my ear, but you make your
okay.
point.
If there is anyone who is heading into the city for any reason, if it's not an emergency, stay away from the city. Stay away from the downtown area.
By all means. Perhaps we can talk to Kai Simonson. Kai, can you hear me? All right, that's a live picture from Kai Simonson. I'll try once again. We've had communications difficulties. I'll say once again because our part of our communications setup is on the top of that World Trade Center building, and that was knocked out shortly after the first plane crashed into the first building. But Kai, can you hear me at all? Obviously, Kai having some
Hey, Jim,
communications
Dick Oliver
problems.
here.
Yes, Ollie?
I must tell you that small pieces, well, they look small from here, but they're probably much larger than I believe, are falling from the scene of the site of the two. There goes a piece. So the authorities are clearing the area around. We still have pieces of debris coming down. Not a lot, but every now and every few moments, another piece of debris, looks like aluminum siding, comes flying down from the scene of the two fires.
Boy, again, the tower on the right of your screen seems to be fire seems to be dying down a little bit, but the fire to the left of your screen still heavy, thick black smoke spewing out. We're just told now, we received words that the Lincoln Tunnel and the Holland Tunnel are both closed. So, just as an aftermath of this terrorist act, terrible terrorist act, the ones I suppose we feared for the longest time, there is no service in or out of any of the airports. The Lincoln and the Holland tunnels are both closed. There is no subway service at all through downtown Manhattan. The 1, 2, 3, 9, N, R, any plane that goes near, any train rather, that goes near the World Trade Center has been discontinued. That as a result of what you see right there. Planes, two of them, one just minutes apart, one into one tower of the World Trade Center, the other into the other tower, causing devastation on the top floors of those buildings.
It wouldn't surprise me, Jim, even though right now we just have a tentative shutdown of the subway system, if indeed the mayor or authorities shut down transit, just given the fact that there may be threats or a potential problem securing all of the major thoroughfares and tunnels throughout the city, simply out of precaution. I would imagine that they might consider doing that over the next short term.
If there were two, there may be more. And you couldn't be too careful at this point. I understand we have another eyewitness to the catastrophe. Shaniqua, are you there?
Yes.
Shaniqua, can you tell me what you saw and heard, please?
Okay, my grandmother's friend, she came upstairs and told us that they was bombing the Twin Towers. So me and my grandfather, we looked out the window and we actually saw the airplane crash into the second tower.
Vivikra, could you do me a favor, please? Could you turn your television, set the sound down?
Okay.
Maybe we're having trouble hearing you. Perhaps that's the cause.
Is that good enough?
Tell us again, if you would. I'm not sure we quite hear you well enough.
Okay, my grandmother's friend, she came upstairs and she was telling us how they was bombing the tower. So me and my grandfather, we started to look out the window and we actually saw the second plane crash into the second tower. We thought it was the airplane, but we not, you know, because we wasn't too actually sure what type of airplane it was, but we know it was the airplane. And we heard the explosion and saw the fire.
All right. All right, we're having trouble communicating with Vivico Cohen, an eyewitness, but again, FBI in Washington is reporting that they have had reports of planes hijacked before the crashes took place. So one would suspect, one would believe that the FBI was investigating hijacked planes when those planes were diverted smack into the World Trade Center, both towers. I'm told also that Mayor Giuliani is preparing to hold a news conference about the disaster. As soon as that happens, of course, we will bring it to you live. Dave?
We might imagine, given that it's primary day, that the governor himself may also be in New York City on this date. Given the importance of the day municipally.
Well, if he isn't, I'm sure he's on his way.
One would hope that
absolutely
that he's not anywhere near that World Trade Center office. Ollie, anything new from your vantage point?
No, Jim, except that emergency vehicles are finding it difficult to get through, not only because of the crowds, but because of the pileup of emergency vehicles. As you know, we're at the south end of City Hall Park, and everything is pretty much frozen here, even though I have not seen ambulances come out of the scene. I've seen them go in. Hopefully that's a sign that there are not too many casualties as a result of this.
Thank you, Ollie.
Jim, do we have word, have they evacuated other landmark buildings like the Empire State Building, the Statue of Liberty, etc.? Do we know?
We have no word on that yet.
It just gives you such a horrible feeling that the city is under siege, which may not be true. This is enough with the World Trade Center, but it gives you such a helpless feeling.
Oh, yeah, there's not much you can do at this point.
You also wonder if this is indeed a hijacking, if these planes were taken over, if the people who took over these planes actually were trained pilots and did the flying into these buildings themselves, or again forced these pilots to head on in.
That it would be an unusual pilot who would do that.
Exactly.
But I'm told we have another eyewitness, Tom O'Hara, on the phone. Tom, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Can you tell me what you heard and saw, please?
Actually, we were in our office building on 36th Street, and I went up to the penthouse where you have a straight downtown view. We saw the northwest tower on fire, and we saw either a slow-moving airplane go down, wrap around the tower, and then slam into the south tower in a ball of flames.
And could from 36th Street, could you hear what was going on?
I couldn't hear, but we have a straight-on shot completely downtown of all of the goings-on the two buildings.
All right, Tom, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So from 36th Street, looking across the tops of buildings, you can see it very clearly. We're told now that, in response to your point, Dave, that the city has shut down every place in and out of Manhattan. All the bridges, all the tunnels are closed. And again, all three airports are closed. So as a result of this double-barreled terrorist attack on the World Trade Center, the city has shut down the Holland Tunnel, the Lincoln Tunnel, the George Washington Bridge. Every way in and out of Manhattan is closed. And I presume that would be from, I'm sorry, and the East River crossings as well.
We are also told that the phone service in the building we are having a problem with the phone service. The phones don't work. Joey was saying the cell phones. You can't get out on the cell phones,
Cell phones
as
are
well.
out.
Yes.
This would be a good time to say, by the way, for those who are using the emergency services number 911 to somehow call and check on relatives or friends, this is the time, most importantly, when that line needs to be kept open for the true emergencies which are taking place in other parts of the city and indeed down on the southern tip of Manhattan at this hour.
Good thought. Again, all this as a consequence of what you see right there. Recapping for you, shortly before 9 o'clock and then shortly before after 9 o'clock, a plane apparently deliberately crashed into the upper floors of first one tower of the World Trade Center, then, as we were watching in horror, another tower of the World Trade Center. There you see the aftermath. And we have reports right now that the President of the United States, of course this terrorist act not directed on us specifically here in New York City, but at the country. We are told that the President of the United States is preparing to go before the nation and comment on this disaster. You look the right side of your screen, the first tower of the World Trade Center seems slightly less engulfed in flames than the one on the left. That because that smoke seems to be much darker, indicating that the fire would be much more active. And I'm told that we have another eyewitness, Dan Lee. Are you there?
Dan.
Dan, can you tell me what you heard and saw?
Yes, I was crossing 6th Avenue at West 4th Street, and there was a terrific noise overhead of a jet crossing over, which I noticed because it was incredibly irritating that it was that loud directly over Manhattan. And as I'm watching this jet, thinking, why is it so low? I see that it's heading right for the Trade Center, and sure enough, it hit the World Trade Center and completely disappeared into the building. I saw no debris falling, really. It just vanished right into the building.
Were there many people around you when it happened, Dan?
There were several people in the crosswalk at 6th Avenue and West 4th, yes.
What was their reaction?
We all just froze and stood in the middle of the street in disbelief watching, and traffic stopped because we were in the way. And we just stood there for quite some time in complete disbelief of what we had just seen.
Where were you when the second blast took place?
I had managed at that point to walk the half block home, and I was watching the coverage on television, and that's when I saw the live picture of the second blast.
All right, Dan, thank you very much for giving us your thoughts. Here now, the President of the United States on this disaster.
Terrorist attack on our country. I have spoken to the Vice President, to the Governor of New York, to the Director of the FBI, and have ordered that the full resources of the federal government go to help the victims and their families, and to conduct a full-scale investigation to hunt down and to find those folks who committed this act. Terrorism against our nation will not stand. And now, if you join me in a moment of silence. May God bless the victims, their families, and America. Thank you very much.
All right, the President, before a moment of silence for the victims of this terrorist act, telling the nation that the full resources of the government would be brought to bear on helping the victims and on finding out who precisely is responsible for this terrible, terrible attack on our country. Right there you see the aftermath, the World Trade Center towers, smoke billowing out of the upper floors, all those floors, I'm sure, fully occupied. The rescue attempts going forward as much as is possible, given the high floors of the tallest buildings in Manhattan, and given the number of people there. Dave?
Jim, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but you may be able to provide some historical perspective. How long have the Twin Towers been up? And once again, the floor height, the number of floors, I think.
Yeah, off the top of my head, somewhere in the 60s, as I recall. And Goes up, what, 102 floors or so, up to the windows on the World restaurant there.
And if we remember from the last bombing, it took months and months and months before that structure was certified sound again and re-inhabited by.
In from the bottom.
Right, that was a bombing from the
Yes.
parking garage level of the tower.
That is something that it's hard to watch this, but it's more bearable because I remember that particular bombing, and I was on the air all morning and all afternoon with that one, is that you saw the people that were being brought out on stretchers. You actually saw bodies and victims. And this, we're not seeing that yet, and we're hoping and praying that there are very few injuries. But just looking at this, it just, as you say, Jim, the carnage is just...
What we're looking at is just the long picture.
It would appear, Jim, as if there's more smoke coming from the ground.
And well, we used to have another, we have, yes, things have fallen to the ground and are burning. And we have another announcement now that you might have expected, and that is the Empire State Building is being evacuated. You're making the point, Lynn, that we are only seeing the long picture, if you will. We are not able to see, perhaps thankfully, inside those buildings and see what kind of devastation has been caused. We're told we have a pilot on the line, Richard Kornacek. Are you there, Richard?
Yes, I am.
Richard, were you up in the air when this took place?
No, I wasn't, but we fly alongside those buildings regularly on what they call the VFR corridor that goes up and down the Hudson River.
And did you see the attacks this morning?
Yes, I did.
What was your vantage point, and what did you hear and see, if you would?
Well, it appears that to fly an airplane right next to the Empire State Building or the World Trade Center, it's perfectly legal. You can do it under what they call VFR rules. And where those airliners apparently came from, it's really hard to say. And they may not have even been talking to the controllers. It's possible that they were hijacked either, quite a distance away, or no one knows where they actually came from. But the ability to fly right next to the World Trade Center has always been available to any pilot who wanted to exercise that privilege.
Excuse me, I just happen to live on the west side, and there's a regular route into LaGuardia that comes right up the Hudson River and then sort of banks right into LaGuardia. So it would not be unusual then to see planes flying near the World Trade Center, and as you say, Richard, it's not unusual. But these pilots must not have had any contact with the traffic control people or the FAA at all. Is that true?
Apparently not, because we've heard nothing contact with them. The airliners that come into LaGuardia when they're over the and that higher corridor, they're at maybe 2,000, 2,500 feet. But you are also allowed to go down below 1,000 feet along that corridor. And one of the things they may have done is shut off on the airplanes. They have what they call transponders, which allow the controllers to identify particularly the aircraft. And they may have shut them off so the controllers could not actually see the airplane very well.
I see.
They would only have what they call a primary target, where it would be very difficult to track them. They'd have to go back and look at their tapes to see exactly where they came from.
Richard, this is Lynn Brown sitting here with Jim Ryan. You are saying that you are allowed to fly a plane that close to these buildings?
Yes.
Any particular type of plane? I mean, is a plane that big flying next to this type of building, wouldn't that seem a little out of the ordinary?
That would be unusual because the airliners are all required to be on IFR flight plans, and they would not normally be allowed to fly that low. However, it doesn't mean that someone could, that would be absolutely unusual for a large plane to fly up and down the Hudson. But airliners routinely do not do that.
Richard, would you just stand by 1 second, please? I just want to tell the folks one thing, and that is the city fire department has now issued a request to all the members of the department, all firefighters, whether you're on your day off or whether you're on vacation. They're asking that you return to duty, that you go to your firehouse and report for duty. So the city is asking all firefighters, whether you're on vacation or whether you're on your day off or whatever, to return to your firehouse and report for duty. I'm sorry, Richard, are you still there?
Yeah.
Dave's got a question for you.
Richard, can you do me a favor and take us through exactly what happens as a plane takes off and circulates around that area? What contact they would typically have with the FAA or the tower at LaGuardia, Kennedy, or Newark? And exactly what would appear on a radar screen to those tracking aircraft in the area?
Let's say if you were taking off in a relatively small plane, say a twin-engine plane or a private aircraft, and you were coming in from the south, which apparently these came from. If they have specific areas, if you're coming in, let's say you were 20 miles out, there's no requirement that you be in radar contact with anyone or radio.
Now, Richard, I'm going to jump in. What if it were a larger aircraft? Because at least on that second hit to us, it appeared as if that was at least a twin-engine jet. What if you're a commercial aircraft?
Even a commercial aircraft is not required to always be on an instrument flight plan. They could take off what they call VFR flight rules, come up the New Jersey coast, and when they got within, say, 10 miles of New York City, they'd have to drop down below 1,600 feet. And VFR, they'd have to then drop down when they got to the Verrazano Bridge. They'd have to be below 1,100 feet.
My question is this. Would folks who are manning a tower, would personnel at the airports early on or relatively early on spot something alarming, that something that big was below a certain altitude or near one of these skyscrapers?
No, they wouldn't. If they came up from the south and they came up below those altitudes, even if they had their altitude reporting on, since they're below the level of where they control the airplanes, they wouldn't pay it any attention. They wouldn't have to, and normally it's not done. And realize that this is an extraordinary circumstance where apparently these planes appear to have been hijacked in some way or taken the control over them, and it basically must have been a suicide mission. Most of these aircraft accidents, when you look at them, most pilots can tell what really happened very quickly, even though the reports take a long time to come out. But the controllers, let's say the controllers that are actually controlling the airliners.
Richard, I'm sorry, I have to interrupt you. I apologize to you, Richard, but we have another development. Thank you very much for your assistance. I appreciate it. Dick Oliver?
Yes, Jim. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Go ahead.
Jim, I can tell you now that the police for the last several minutes have been evacuating all of lower Manhattan. I'm standing at the foot of City Hall Park, and as I see people being screaming out of the lower Manhattan area, I'm looking down Broadway, and they're encouraged, move, please, please move. And they're moving them north towards the up Broadway and towards the Brooklyn Bridge. So virtually all of lower Manhattan is being evacuated at this time. All people except for emergency personnel are being asked to leave the area.
Oliver, that may tie in with another, I must emphasize, unconfirmed report that we have, that there is yet another plane on its way. So, Lord knows we hope that is not the case, but we do have an unconfirmed report that another plane might be on its way. We have an eyewitness from our own staff. Lincoln, how you doing?
Hi, Jim. I was in my apartment. I live on the 36th floor at 59th Street in Columbus, and I have a clear view of downtown, and I can see the towers. And I was in my living room. I was getting dressed to rush in here, and I saw one tower. It had all the smoke. And then I saw another plane that was really close, and it went behind, and you can see it doing a turn. It was turning its wings, and it went around, and then I saw it go into the other tower, and I saw a big pool of flames just come out, and there was a big explosion. I didn't hear anything, so I'm at 59th Street, but you could see it, and there were flames, and there was so much smoke, and you can see that it was an entire different building. But I saw it was a different plane.
So two different planes?
Absolutely.
Now, when you left your building, you went downstairs to come in here. What kind of a reaction did you encounter on the streets? Were people aware of it? Were people frightened by it?
Absolutely, people are aware of it. I mean, just walking here, I was hearing people saying, you know, it was one plane, it was two plane, and everyone was hearing sirens. And people, I know people were trying to use their cell phones. No one could get a cell out. And my taxi driver was talking about it. And he had the radio up, and he was, when we would stop, he would put his window down and tell the other guy. So everybody knows about it, I think, at this point, and they're talking about it.
We just got word that from the Associated Press that it's pretty sure now that one of those planes, the first one to hit, was hijacked after takeoff from Boston. So that word we have just in. The first plane that hit the World Trade Center, the North Tower, was hijacked en route from Boston, and presumably that's a commercial jet, and there were people on board as well. So this is nothing but a terrible tragedy. I'm sorry for interrupting you, Deb. You were
That's
saying.
okay. I can just say that that plane that I saw, the second plane, that was definitely a larger plane. I can't say which kind, but that was not a small plane. That was definitely a large plane.
So the first one was large enough, and the second one was much larger.
Well, I didn't see the first one. I can just vouch for the one I saw, and that one was certainly a large plane.
When you saw the plane, though, did you get a sense that it was heading directly for the building?
You know, when I saw it, I was thinking, gosh, you know, that's really low. I thought it was part of the, of the recovery effort. And then I saw it, make a turn, and I was wondering what it would be doing, but then I saw it come around and hit the other side, and then huge flames, huge flames.
Deb, I'm going to have to interrupt you, I'm afraid, but the dimensions of this catastrophe are growing. We are told now that this is not quite confirmed yet, but we are told fairly reliably that a plane has crashed into the Pentagon in Washington. So not only have we had a terrible catastrophe here in New York, where planes crashed into both towers of the World Trade Center, but we are told now that a plane has crashed into the military complex in Washington, the Pentagon, which of course houses the nerve center of all the military operations of this country. So a 1, 2, 3 attack on the United States apparently today. 2 here in New York and 1 in Washington at the Pentagon. There you see a live picture from Washington. We would have to guess that that smoke is emanating from the Pentagon in the background. So the military nerve center of this country has been attacked by terrorists. And because of that, we are told that the White House has now been evacuated.
Explosions at the World Trade Center here in New York, where 2 planes slammed into the buildings.
I would imagine.
Okay, that's the picture in Washington. So now we can say with certainty that there have been at least 3 attacks on visible symbols of our country. 2 here in New York and 1 in Washington. You're looking at 2 different views of the World Trade Center, where planes, first one tower and then another plane, a larger plane, into the other tower, crashed just before and after 9 o'clock, and then just moments ago, a third plane crashed into the Pentagon, which, as you know, houses the nerve center of our military might, and that certainly is an unprecedented attack upon this country. One would presume by suicidal terrorists, and I imagine we'll find out soon enough who staged this attack and what will be done about it.
We're getting something on the wire also about the stock exchange, which planned to open this morning at 10. Is delaying a half an hour, so we've got developments all over the place. And I don't know about your computers now. I'm starting to have a problem with my computer. It is just randomly jumping from one story to the other.
Given going forward, as there are, I think, stories are incoming on a very rapid basis. So that would be the.
Given what we're seeing at this point, I would imagine major buildings in major cities, from the Sears Tower in Chicago to other symbols, as you mentioned, Jim, in Washington and Boston, I would imagine are all going to be on high alert, if not evacuated in Washington.
The West Wing of the White House and the Capitol building have both been evacuated.
Okay, so in Washington, just to recap now, on this terrible, terrible day, here in New York, you happen to be looking at a picture in Washington, so we'll start with that. That's in Washington, a plane has struck the Pentagon in Washington, and that, of course, houses our military nerve center, and that has taken place, and the Pentagon now obviously being evacuated. The West Wing of the White House is being evacuated, and here in New York, 2 terrorist attacks on the World Trade Center. A plane deliberately smashed into the upper floors, first of one tower, and then several minutes later, the other tower. 2 large planes. We understand the second one, or the first one rather, was hijacked from Boston and presumably loaded with passengers. So as a consequence of these terrorist attacks here in New York, we have the island of Manhattan virtually isolated. You cannot get in or out of Manhattan by any bridge or any tunnel, and any subway train that goes anywhere near the World Trade Center is not running. All right, Dick Oliver was fairly close to the scene when it happened. He was reporting on what is now an afterthought to this day, the primary election, down at City Hall when the blasts took place. Ollie? I don't know if Ollie is, we again, our part of our television operation is on top of the World Trade Center, so we lost the picture. Yes, you're coming to us by phone. Ollie?
Yeah, Jim, I hear you now. I'm down by the Brooklyn Bridge now, where people are streaming over the bridge, heading towards Brooklyn, obviously. The police are encouraging people to get out of lower Manhattan. So that's going on now. There are some cars being permitted to clear away to allow more and more pedestrians to get over the Brooklyn Bridge.
Is there any vehicular traffic on the bridge, Ollie?
There's just a little bit coming off on the side ramps. The south ramp has some traffic on it, but that's going very, very slowly. The pedestrians have taken over the entire bridge, almost the entire bridge. Now, as far as the first blast is concerned, I did hear some kind of a scream. Just a split second before that tremendous blast. And I did not know it was an aircraft. I did not know what it was. But you were able to confirm what happened with the second explosion in the second tower.
Ollie, let me just interrupt you for a second, if I may. We are told now that the White House has been threatened with a terrorist attack. Maybe some sort of a verbal threat, I don't know, but one would assume that the White House, given the fact that the Pentagon was under attack and these World Trade Center was under attack, this country is under attack by terrorists, both here in New York and in Washington. And just moments ago, the President of the United States went in before the nation to make this announcement. I understand we're going to rerun the bite of the president. Okay, here it is.
Today we've had a national tragedy. 2 airplanes have crashed into the World Trade Center in an apparent terrorist attack on our country. I have spoken to the Vice President, to the Governor of New York, to the Director of the FBI, and have ordered that the full resources of the federal government go to help the victims and their families, and to conduct a full-scale investigation to hunt down and to find those folks who committed this act. Terrorism against our nation will not stand. And now, if you join me in a moment of silence.
All right, that was the President just a few minutes ago announcing that the full resources of the government would be put to help the victims of these tragedies and to find out who did it. And I'm also told now that the FAA has announced from Washington that no aircraft anywhere in the country is being allowed to take off. That's from the FAA, because apparently these two planes that smashed into the World Trade Center, and perhaps the one in the Pentagon as well, were hijacked, commercial jets from various airports. So, as a result of that, the FAA has announced that no aircraft is being allowed to take off anywhere in the country.
All right, Jim, we do have
Yes.
someone who has just joined us on the set here. His name is Joseph Jaffe. And Mr. Jaffe, where are you from?
Decision Strategies Fairfax. We're an investigative consulting and security firm.
All right.
What do you make of this?
Well, it's a tragedy, and it appears, if it didn't appear first from the first plane, after the second plane, and now the one at the Pentagon, that there's a well-coordinated effort afoot to bring terrorism to the United States.
What could have been done, if anything, to prevent this kind of an attack?
At this juncture, it's very hard to guess. We have a country that's wide open. We have borders that are wide open. We have freedoms that are wide open. And over the past 25 and 30 years, some of us have been following terrorism for at least that long. Our country does not generally get into the investigation of terrorism the way it ought to, in terms of being the state that could prevent it. We value our freedom more, so there's very little you can do to take a person who's bent on killing himself or herself from taking over a plane. I mean, of course, you could enforce measures and be very strict on who gets onto what planes and how that would work, but that isn't going to work in this country.
I'm told, Mr. Jaffe, that we have is it a picture of the Pentagon? Let's just take this is a picture of the central military headquarters of our country, the Pentagon of the United States.
Apparently, the president.
This is the president's plane taking off from Florida, where he had been heading back to Washington to deal with the emergency. Mr. Jaffe, Dave, you had a question?
Well, two things. Number one, I was going to ask Mr. Jaffe, you said you're either based out of Fairfax or your company is down...
We have our company's in New York and in Falls Church, Virginia.
Okay, Falls Church, Virginia. You would very well know, as anyone who flies into the Washington area, what's stunning about the Pentagon attack is the airspace. While we do have a wide open country, the airspace around the Pentagon, the White House, the national monuments down there is extremely restricted. So number one, does it surprise you that an aircraft was able to get into, literally right into the Pentagon? And number two, does it surprise you, since the attack on the World Trade Center back in the early 90s, that this has taken so long for terrorism to once again return to our domestic locale?
If you recall, over the last few years, there have been a number of people interdicted coming out of Canada, coming out of Brunswick, coming across various parts of the northern country, where people have been caught with the components to make the bombs. So it doesn't surprise me that we are the target of an attack. It surprises me that it's taken as long for us to suffer what we've suffered, and it creates a very heightened awareness of what we have to do now. The question becomes, do we sacrifice our complete freedoms in order to not suffer this? There's got to be a balance. But
I'm just interrupting you for a second, Mr. Jaffe. Just want to report to our viewers that we have reports now that the Capitol and the Treasury and the White House are being evacuated in Washington. Continue your thoughts.
Have we been looking in the wrong places? We've been looking at terrorism in other areas. Have we been looking at them and neglecting our own backyard?
You could surmise that. Years ago, there were a whole host of different groups that started with the Francis Tavern bombing, LaGuardia bombing, and others which we worked on. And then there was a very complete effort, at least in New York City and other places, to penetrate those organizations. I can't speak of what's been ongoing recently as to what we've penetrated, but we might have to sacrifice some of what we have by way of rights, at least to allow intelligence to be gathered so we can prevent some type of tragedy such as this. We need to look at home.
Apparently we got blindsided by this one. We were looking at a picture now. The one on the left is the Pentagon, and the one on the right is the World Trade Center. What, if you could take an educated guess, Mr. Jaffe, and say what kind of restrictions will now be placed upon the citizens of this country in order to combat terrorists, things like this?
Well, if we look at airports, our security is probably not the highest of all the countries in the world. And if we're worried about planes and commercial planes and hijacking, we could increase the types of things we did when the hijackings were so prevalent. But if we're looking at small planes and other things, it's very hard to stop that.
Now, watching terrorism as you have for as long as you have, is it odd that at this point, and maybe we have and simply don't know, that we don't have a name tag attached, a claim attached, a political group attached to what has happened within the last 2 hours or so? And what is the aim then, if it is not immediately to say, we did this, this is our cause?
I don't think it's odd. I think depending on who it is that's involved, they may have different reasons for deciding when to go public. But you don't need a claim. The purpose of terrorism, at least here, is to do just that, to get the people unnerved, to get business unsettled, to get the country totally taken apart and worried. And to that extent, right now, that appears successful. The city is worried.
We are a nation right now worried. The FAA has shut down all airplane traffic nationwide. We are paralyzed as a nation right now. I mean, of course, people can get in their cars and drive, but no one can fly, and I'm surprised that we haven't heard anything about the railways.
Well, I don't know. I understand, at least in our city, the subways, at least some of the lines are now closed. I think people have trepidation about going underground. They don't want to be there.
Absolutely.
If we suffer a short-term setback because we need to increase the security, we won't be a paralyzed country. If we go through and say we can't move, then the terrorism will have its effect. And so the thing that we have to do is literally not panic, see that it's a disaster to some extent, and go on with business. Because if we don't, then the acts that they've now done, I mean, the World Trade Center's been targeted before, it's been hit before, and for a short term, if you recall, the city was paralyzed then. We can't allow ourselves to be paralyzed. That would just give in and create the effect they want.
They've hit the Pentagon, the White House is being evacuated.
I would assume that most structures of any moment, and most tunnels of any moment, in any place.
Take a look at that, if you would, Mr. Jaffe. That's the live picture of the Pentagon, having been hit by an attack. Again, in Washington, we're told no, that's not the Pentagon. No,
we just heard that there was another explosion in the basement or one of the lower levels of the World Trade Center.
Well, that would it would seem from that picture that you're right there, Dave, because we see.
From the bottom.
We don't know if that's anything that's fallout from the planes striking doing.
Yeah.
News coverage event.
Could be as a consequence of perhaps something falling from it. It certainly looks like an awful lot of smoke to be.
And we are now, for the first time, beginning to get some pictures of people in the streets.
Yeah, this is our live picture from the scene. Now we saw earlier the smoke. It's considerably less black than it was